Hey, good morning. How are you doing? Hope you're having I don't know, it's early morning here, so it's probably late in most places except east of Germany. Yesterday, so here in Frankfurt at this private yoga institute, there's a Saturday morning class, which I have made into a kind of an intro to intermediate series class. And so a lot of the people in the daily practice um, are doing primary and adding on some intermediate. So this gives a chance to not worry about primary so much and just focus on the intermediate postures and kind of learn some techniques of maybe how to do them. So yesterday I was teaching a workshop, but the morning was began with this lead intermediate series class, and some days we go a little further, some days we don't go so far because we're working on like how to do Kapotasana, how to do these things, you know. And I really enjoy the class, and the students here enjoy it also. But I did this workshop, and it was about I call it I've kind of taught this workshop for years. In when I was living in St. Louis, I came up with it after I'd done a few workshops with a few other teachers around Mula Bandha, and I realized in my initial beginning stages of doing practicing Ashtanga yoga, I didn't really know about Trishtana. Trishtana is the breath, the bandhas, the drishti, and that's the focal point of the practice. So when I came back to it, and people started saying that all the time, you know, I heard Mula Bandha, I heard all that stuff, but no one ever told you how to do it. So when I came back, I keep saying I came back. I never really left Ashtanga, but I was just not doing it daily. Because I was learning other things and focusing on how to move my energy and focusing on how to get my body in good alignment with some different practices. So when I came back to it and started doing it all the time, it's when I realized I needed to go to Mysore. But I also, for a year or two, went to a bunch of workshops in St. Louis. You can drive to Chicago, and you could go see Kino. And I spent a week with Mark Roberts, and different things like that. And Kino had done a Mula Bandha workshop, and then I went to a couple other people who had done who had done workshops based around Mula Bandha. So I kind of started working with it strongly in my practice because it was making my back feel better, and I needed to find this internal quality of stability that was going to support my spine and my sacrum. My sacrum really is the problem when I was practicing, and so I started taking my time during my practice because I wasn't teaching in the early morning. I was teaching later, and I could take my time and I could work on it and figure out my opinions about all these things and how I do it. So I sort of, when I started teaching Ashtanga regularly, not full time, but regularly, um, I came up with a workshop called Breath Bandhas and Drishti. And I also came up with, I had a different one that focused mostly on Mula Bandha, Mula Bandha, the Master Key, named after that famous book by, do I have it? Did I bring it with me? I did bring it. It's by one of the swamis, and I called the workshop that also. So anyway, so yesterday I was teaching this workshop, and what we do is we learn the very gross engagements of Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha, like the super physical versions of it. And then we forget about it and we learn about breathing, not in the lower belly, but like from the navel up. So your diaphragm still moves because your diaphragm has to move because it needs to unlock that space where the energy can stop flowing from your solar plexus to your heart. And then we connect the two of them, and then we stand up and start doing small practice, Surya A, Surya B, a few poses. If someone has any pose they want to work on because they want to feel how this works in the pose, then they can do it. And while they're doing it, while I'm leading them through doing it, I tell them the drishti so that they can bring that internalized focus back to the practice. And it was interesting because we had quite a few discussions, because at the beginning, I was doing I'm telling them to hug their sit bones together, and I'm doing it with them. And I start getting super hot because I'm used to doing this. So it really invokes your Agni. So you get this fire going. And I started, not dripping sweat, but I was getting, coated with sweat. And the discussions were really interesting because a lot of people are very sensitive to energy, but they don't know how to sort of get a hold on that, where you can not let it affect you so much, but you can also move it on your own. But a lot of people are not sensitive to energy at all because they kind of just go through life and they don't really care. And it's very beautiful how it kind of all works out. And if by the end of the workshop, some people can feel something, then I always kind of feel like I've kind of done my job. And then when it starts to practice, when they come to the regular practice, the weekly, daily, the weekly Mysore program, the daily coming in to do their thing daily, I always notice they kind of do everything a little slower, everything a little bit more intentional until they get used to doing it. Because it is like retraining yourself to focus and have this center within yourself that you're stoking the energy in and using that to move through the practice rather than muscling your way through the practice. A lot of people want to muscle their way through the practice because they think they want this muscle tone. But what you can do is, I'm going to be 55 in a month, and I will say I have muscle tone, but I am by no means a muscular, like I'm not ripped. I don't have, an 8-pack, and you can see my veins popping out of my biceps and all that. I'm toned because I practiced for so long, and I practice now, but I am not ripped, so I don't think about it in those terms anymore. I kind of think about it in the terms as how can I do this, affect the energy that's in and around me to move, and stay soft while I'm doing it, because I don't want to be hard. What I've discovered is, since my body muscularly is softer, I have a lot more ease in my physical life. Moving, walking, doing anything is a lot easier. When I was tight, from doing the practice, and it was before I got Rolfed also, when I was tight, it was hard to move through the practice. It's hard to sit. Like, I'm sitting on this couch right now, sideways, so the light comes in, and I sit here often when I'm writing, or when I'm reading, or when I'm watching something on my phone or my laptop when it's working. And I can do it for a long time. But that's very hard to do when your muscles are hard. So I much prefer to have them be soft. And that brings me to thinking about a quote from, not a quote, it's not a quote, but it was in one of his books. And I want to say it was Light on Life. So Iyengar wrote several books in his life, and he had learned from Krishnamacharya. So one thing I always appreciated about him is that he knew English so well that he could write some really good books that were inspiring to me, because he had done it his whole life and he had these great effects, and they kept him optimally functioning in his brain, his body, and everything. When he died in his 90s, he hadn't really had any problems. He just kind of, when the problem came up, he had it and he died. And he wasn't living so miserably. So one thing he talked about was, as we practice, our goal has to be to get our fascia separated from our muscles. So the fascia is a kind of a sinuous, stringy lines of matter, what we would call ligaments, or not ligaments, but something like that. And they hold the muscles to the bone in place. And when that fascia, as you get older, it starts to wind up and get tighter, so your muscles get really locked. So when I got Rolfed, I'd been practicing and I could hover in chaturanga and talk because it was just easy. I just was hanging out there because the fascia was wound up so tight. So after I got Rolfed, I couldn't do that anymore and I was angry. But then my muscles started working and I was like, oh, I haven't really been using my muscles much this whole time. So when that freedom came and I was able to focus on not using the muscles so much, squeezing the muscles to the bone, allowing the energy inside the body to move me through the practice. And then the muscles and the fascia started staying looser and softer. I felt much better. And I feel much better to this day for that reason. And I haven't been Rolfed for quite some years. So, and I still have the same effects. So it's quite nice. Anyway, what I was really wanting to get at is, it's always interesting when you know a lot of people, but you don't really know when they're sensitive or when they're not sensitive, and you're trying to figure this out. And you can be too sensitive. It's hard to be sensitive to the energy of things because you have to figure out how to function while this feeling is affecting you. But I think that's one good thing about learning, like what I taught yesterday, is how to affect the energy yourself. So when you're doing the practice, you get a little bit more, I won't say control, because it's not about control. It's about being able to guide yourself through the process as you open up, so you can feel, oh, maybe this isn't, I don't want to go to this place because I don't like the energy there, or this person really isn't someone I want to hang around much because their energy kind of pulls me in a different way. But then you can also have the control over the energy inside yourself, to where those things that are external to you don't have to affect you so much. And that's interesting to me. And watching people figure that out, helping people initialize figuring that out, and then watching them as they figure it out and have the aha moments is very interesting to me. I really like it. So just talking about, because I'm curious how many people really are super insensitive to this stuff or are overly sensitive to this stuff, and how do you get to the middle? In the sutras, one thing it always says is it gives you this extreme and this extreme, and then you have to pull yourself back to the middle. And that's the goal of, that's what yoga really is you can feel this and you can be there, but you have to learn how to come back here. And you can feel this and you can be there, but you have to learn how to come back here, because this is where we have to see it. This is where the vantage point needs to be from. Otherwise, the thing that's the extreme on this side can drag you down with it, or this one can hike you up the mountain with it. And you need to be understanding and in the knowing of how to allow that or disallow that. Okay, that's all I got. I got to go teach class, and this is the class after the workshop yesterday, so it'll be interesting to see how people practice today. Talk to you soon.